I don't think I suck as a person. I
Exactly.
think I'm trying to do something impossible.
Exactly.
And I'm failing forward and getting better.
That's shame actually rippling out to the community.
Yeah.
So blaming others is the first go-to shame response.
Nice.
And that's the most common because a lot of people struggle to take accountability.
Yep.
Conscious couples, business partners, and individuals, welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and relationship expertise to help you consistently cultivate the most magnificent relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges. We'll help you have the courage to be your authentic self, communicate effectively, and constructively resolve conflict.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching, speaking, podcasting, and hosting live events with conscious couples all over the world, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. Today we have episode 179, What is your partner's shame response? Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show and so many others. Personal development, self-improvement, personal growth, mental health. We have a few other genres now too. So I track this every single day in my spreadsheet. We are now working with 107 podcasters and business owners, if you include the latest group of group coaching. So if you're a podcaster, please reach out to myself or Kevin Palmieri. Next Level Podcast Solutions is we do what we do best so that you can do what you do best. And this podcast is produced by that. So is Evolve Ventures, so is Next Level University, so is Business Growth University. So if you like any of our content and you want to start, grow, scale, or monetize a podcast, reach out to myself or my business partner. Our links and or social media will be in the show notes, our email addresses as well. Okay, sweetheart. So ladies first, as always, what is your intention for today's episode?
My intention is to help every single listener on this podcast episode understand what their partner's go-to shame response is. What is it? Why does it exist? And to locate which of the four that we'll bring up today it is.
Okay, so you have been studying shame, vulnerability, generational shame, generational trauma. You have your trauma certification that I'm looking at over there. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about why it matters to understand what your partner's shame response is.
Yeah, so shame is an evolutionary based emotion. I'm going to categorize it that. And essentially, when you experience shame as a human being, you have a narrative that essentially says, I am a bad person. And when someone has that emotion come up inside of them, and usually it's happening unconscious, we've talked about the unconscious many times already in this episode or in this podcast. When you have shame bubble up as an emotion, it happens so quick. And when you have that narrative to yourself that I'm a bad person at the deep core identity of who you are, and at a character level, it starts to really enrapture you and put you into what's called a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, a stress response. So shame is what we call an adaptive response. So it is helpful, and it was helpful for us way back when we needed shame as a function of staying with our communities and making sure that we don't go outside of our communities. Now, as we are in the 21st century, it is not as adaptive within our species to have shame, because at the deep root of our essence, we more likely than not aren't a bad person at the core of who we are. And so when shame comes up and we have that narrative running in our unconscious, how we act and react and behave in relationship to one another ends up having us say things that we don't mean, having us do things that we wish we could take back. And ultimately, when it comes down to the relationship, we act out of integrity with who we aspire to be in our relationship. So for example, when you're in a relationship and your partner says something like, honey, I don't know about the chicken tonight. It's kind of crispy. And all of a sudden, in split seconds, you have this response that's kind of snappy or prickly we've talked about before. And you're like, well, it was because you didn't get the right groceries or something like that. That's a very common type of response to someone who's experiencing shame. And that's one of the 4 that we've talked about, which is defensiveness, or even you could categorize that in blaming others. And so it's important for couples to understand what their shame response is, because without that, they're literally just operating in a very old way of thinking in their unconscious and letting their unconscious drive them. And more often than not, it drives them off the road in relationship.
Okay, so none of this is conscious, by the way. So you keep mentioning the subconscious and unconscious. And no one is identifying consciously with the prefrontal cortex, I am a bad person. Hi, my name's Alan, I'm a bad person. It's not that. It's the unconscious narrative. Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, it was a survival mechanism to fit in with your tribe. So tribes used shame. If you go outside of our rituals or our religion or our beliefs, you get shamed, which keeps you in the group and keeps you sort of docile and controllable, yep. Which was a survival mechanism because way back in hunter-gatherer days, if you were ostracized from the tribe and not a part of a group, you would basically die or starve or get killed.
Not only that, but in addition to that, evolutionary theorists and scientists also have traced back that if you are mating with species outside of your species, there's increased probability for implications during pregnancy or a virus being contracted that the actual gut biome of one quote unquote tribe has to fight off infection that the other tribe doesn't. So if there was interracial or interspecies mating, if you will, and this is way back, it also was to try to make sure that the species survived. So okay. Yeah, it has really interesting roots.
Okay, so I have a past client who is in an interracial marriage, and she has experienced tremendous shame from her Asian culture with his culture. And there was shame there. So shame is used by other people to basically control you and to try to get you to conform. And in the past, that was a survival mechanism. And now it's very outdated, is what you're saying.
Right. Like I said, it was adaptive, aka helpful. And back then it was because of obviously things that we don't have to really concern ourselves with nowadays. But shame still exists, again, because we have not grown in many ways that
we've not evolved.
Yeah, we have not evolved in the regard that really helps couples work together.
Okay, so there are 4 shame responses. The title of this episode is What is your partner's shame response? Mm-hmm. You mentioned fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. These are a little different twists on those. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you mentioned, imagine Emilia cooks us dinner, and imagine I am a shitty partner. and I basically say a passive-aggressive comment of, hey, the chicken kind of not great. And Emilia has been shamed in the past because a great woman or wife or intimate partner who's female is supposed to cook things well in order to be. So she internalizes that unconsciously as I'm not good enough.
Or I'm a bad partner if I don't know how to cook.
Okay. Can we go there for a second?
Yeah.
Just like I'm a bad partner if I don't provide because I'm an American male and that's what American males do. Okay, so the idea of the Conscious Couples podcast is to take the unconscious, which we just talked about, those generational enculturations, conditioning, and make it conscious so that you can make your own rule book. And that's really what we do is we make our own rule book. We had someone in the past who was part of a relationship where in this religion, she was not allowed to walk in and out of doorways on Saturdays. And Emilia and I had a really hard time with this because she basically wasn't allowed to leave the bedroom. Yeah. And she couldn't walk in and out of doorways. She wasn't allowed to use technology, something like that.
Yeah.
And again, I just remember thinking that's got to be the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And quite frankly, it's obviously a control tactic of some kind that it maybe made sense at one point, but what's the deal?
There's specific beliefs that are underneath why we do specific behaviors. And when you're in a group, a lot of time there's a word that's called co-opting, where you essentially control and manipulate behaviors of a group to have this sense of belonging, but then cloak it in some sort of belief that isn't actually serving the community. It's instead keeping them small and slicing them of their individuality and autonomy.
And so what we are for at the Conscious Couples podcast is create your own rule book.
Yeah.
Think for yourself. and create your own rule book in your relationship. And we talked about this on a previous episode where are you really committed? We call it a code of commitment, where you and I decided in advance what we want for us and for our relationship. So we are free thinkers here.
Yeah.
We are here to create our own rule book, and we are not here to allow anyone from 2,000 years ago to dictate what we do and don't do. And I'm just going to come out and say it. It is what it is.
Yeah,
Okay, so
well, I think that that's important to say because of the fact that why we're talking about this is because so many relationships just end up in a spiral of shame over and over and over again. And that causes conflicts. That causes totally all the time couples growing apart instead of together. And what we're saying here is essentially that we don't need to do that, right? Shame is has an old history of functionality in relationships, but it doesn't have to be present anymore. And because our unconscious usually drives us, we do not take what is unconsciously driving us and pull it to the front and say, I want to actually choose different, right? So we want to get into the 4 different types of shame or shame responses, because it's just automatic. And then what your body does after that, it goes into a spiral of behavior that doesn't serve you. And the crucial thing that's important to understand is shame begets shame, meaning shame just breeds more shame. So in that example, if I'm not cooking, all of a sudden I might lash out or I might withdraw, right? 2 different types. And as a result of that, you might then get triggered and go into your shame response. And so couples just will go back and forth. And so the 4 different types. The first one I kind of alluded to, but picture a couple that is headed to a summer barbecue. All of a sudden they get out of the car and they're ready to show up to their friend's house, and they see other people coming from their cars, right? And they're carrying like a plate of food. It's like a potluck, right?
Yeah.
And then the man turns to the wife turns to the man, and they're like, what the heck? We didn't know we were supposed to bring anything. And one of them starts to blame the other. Well, you were supposed to cook stuff. You were supposed to bring. And then she starts blaming him back. So blaming others is the first and most common shame response that couples have.
Great example.
We've all been there.
This is one of the reasons the holidays have always been so hard for me, because I'm not big on giant gifts and grand gestures and then you get to a event and everyone brought a gift and a bouquet of flowers and I'm like, oh shit,
right?
I missed the memo.
That's a great example of literally the culture will have some sort of shame of like, oh, did you see that Sandy didn't bring the potluck?
Yeah. Did you see what she was wearing?
Exactly. So that's shame actually rippling out to the community. So blaming others is the first go-to shame response. Nice. And that's the most common because a lot of people struggle to take accountability.
Yeah. Okay, so number 1, blaming others. That is the most common, and that's what people go to. The opposite of ownership is blame others.
Yeah, so the second one is defense or deny.
So if you don't want to grow at all, blame others.
Nice. And definitely if you don't want to connect. So defense and deny, we use the example about the cooking, right? If all of a sudden you're like, the tots are a little too crispy, and this happens all the time with me. Like I all of a sudden am like, this shame of being a woman who doesn't really care about cooking and actually cares about bigger, important things. I'll be like, all of a sudden getting into my learned defensive response of like, well, you didn't tell me how much you wanted it crispy. Right? It's not conscious. And I catch myself and be like, oh my God, I'm getting defensive. This doesn't need to happen.
You catch yourself way quicker than that, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. But most people either in defensiveness or they'll deny or like, I didn't know that you wanted it. Like it will go into this narrative of denying that you did anything that has implications. And
if anyone is curious, I like my tots soggy.
Really?
A little bit, yeah. Nice,
soggy on the inside.
Well, they need
crispy
to
on the out.
No, just straight up soggy. So,
whoa,
they need to be moisture. Okay,
that's true. When I cooked them the other night, you ate all of them so quick.
Unbelievable. Crushed
I
it.
should have taken those notes.
Yeah, you probably thought they were.
That's shame right there. I should have taken notes.
No, you didn't do anything wrong. Shoot. I appreciate that you did anything at all. I'm joking. All right, real talk though, everybody. This is the stuff.
Yeah.
You hurt your partner all the time on accident because of this crap, and it's all fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Hi, Amy and Chris Lennius here to give a quick moment of appreciation for Alan and Emilia. We have been working with them for a few months now, maybe 6, maybe going on 6 months now, and we appreciate you guys so much. To see you guys work as a team, to help couples work as a team is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. Not only have you helped us reconnect and helped us with our marriage, you've also helped us through big life moments, with boundaries, with creating our own stable unit at home. We appreciate you guys so, so much.
Yes, truly heartfelt. Appreciate you guys and everything you've done for us.
Thanks, guys. We
Thanks.
love you.
So, okay, the third one is avoid and withdraw. And this one, I would, as a practitioner, I would love to see in detail the stats around the avoid and withdraw, because I think that comes as a close second, but I'm going to put it third because of this. Avoid and withdraw is essentially what you see on the surface level.
Can I use an example?
Sure.
Real quick.
I mean, I have one, but I'd love for you to go ahead.
I have a great one. So I was on earlier with a client of mine. His name's Greg. And he is on vacation right now. And we set him up with this amazing peak performance tracking system where he's got metrics and he's got habits and he's killing it. And he was in the green for like 3 weeks straight.
Good for him.
Yeah, right? But here's the thing. Until he went on vacation. He's in Tennessee now.
Yeah.
Road trip with the fam.
Fun.
And his numbers are all red now. And I said, I'm so glad that you still showed up, brother, because in the past he would get stuck in shame, feel so bad that he was sucking, and then not show up to the call.
Because he didn't want the mirror.
He didn't want the mirror of
him breaking promises to himself.
And I said this to him. I said, brother, I'm grateful you're here. We're going to reestablish a baseline and we're going to get back after it. And it's understandable, but I'm just glad you stayed. I said, just stick with it. Just stay consistent, because in the past you would get stuck in shame and do what's known as quiet quitting. Have you heard a lot about quiet quitting? Okay, so quiet quitting is essentially in corporate during COVID. A lot of people would get overwhelmed and they couldn't figure out how to be productive at home, and they would quiet quit their job and just kind of opt out. There's a lot of people that are very unengaged at work, and I run a team with 18 people and I make sure everyone's as engaged as possible. Okay, so let's go to the next one because we don't have a ton of time.
Okay,
but, so that was what? Withdraw.
So that was what you were talking about. He actually didn't do it, but you mentioned in the past. So
he has in the past.
Another example of this is what I'll hear with certain clients where, let's say, you're cohabitating with your partner or you're living with your partner and you guys have agreed to split the rent, right? 50-50. All of a sudden it's time for your partner to pay his share of the rent. And you ask him, hey babe, can I have your share of the rent? The fact that you have to ask him is beyond me. But anyways, aside from that, right there, he'll likely avoid you or deflect and try to redirect the conversation to something else. Yeah. And if he's in shame, you know exactly he's avoiding and he's withdrawing because he's trying to like deflect ever going near the fact that you have to ask him for that, and he's not actually on point giving rent without you actually asking. To that end. All right, so that's number 3, avoid and withdraw.
That leads to a spiral because now he's avoiding you for a reason that has nothing to do with your relationship. And then what's that going to do to the relationship?
Instead of getting vulnerable and saying, hey, babe, like I'm really struggling right now. I'm going to get it to you. And here's the expectation that I can set. Nice. Or being proactive about that, right? So the last one.
So vulnerability is the cure of these.
Vulnerability is a great cure. The antidote to shame, I do need to mention, is self-compassion and compassion in general. That is like mathematically, scientifically proven.
Okay, real quick, guys. For the guys out there, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. What do you mean by self-compassion? Like, what does that even look like?
It's like a...
Because in guy terms, that's a no-fly zone. You're not allowed to have compassion at all. Because the moment you're vulnerable or compassionate, your guy friends growing up...
Right, would poke fun at you.
Would poke fun at you. So what is that? What does self-compassion look like? What's an
is
example?
like, I accept myself for my flaws, and I accept the fact that I am imperfect, and I'm going to be kind and gentle to myself in the fact that I am imperfectly perfect.
AKA every guy's biggest fear.
Every guy's biggest fear is being soft, but like that's not at all what it is. And the men who don't want to go near compassion or learn about self-compassion are the ones who will never, ever be able to get out of their shame spirals.
So you've noticed me, and you've been in past relationships with other men that didn't have the self-compassion, and I work through it apparently quickly when I'm sucking. Mm-hmm. What have you noticed? Like, what's the difference? Like, how am I doing that? I genuinely am asking because I'm not consciously saying, Alan, I'm going to have compassion for you now. It's more recently I have been working really late and I've been going past the cutoff. I'm supposed to close the store, quote unquote, at 8 p.m. And I haven't done that in fucking 2 weeks. And I know why I'm doing that. The business is growing really well. So thank you, everybody. But how am I working through that?
Accountability. Accountability allows self-compassion to start to seep in.
So taking ownership?
Yeah, taking ownership, accountability, that's the same thing. So like You can take
You
ownership
said
and
blame the
accountability.
self is shame, a shame response.
You can take accountability and take ownership. That's not blaming self.
Oh,
No, there's a very difference. Blame is shame-based.
I don't understand.
Accountability and ownership are
So how is
without shame.
me saying I'm sucking not shame-based? I know that it's not in me.
So on the topical level, you're talking about the behaviors that I continuously am choosing. It's not necessarily serving us, but I know that I, at the core level, have an intent to change, and my plan is to do so. And I'm in track and inbound to that. It's not going to happen right now, and it's not going to happen within 2 to 3 days or another week. But at the deepest core level within me, I have committed to improving this behavior. And so as a result
Where's
of
compassion in that?
separation of the behavior and the identity, you have the identity that's like, I am a good person and my behaviors are sucking right now. So when you say I'm sucking, you're really localizing the behavior instead of the identity and character.
Yeah, of course. I don't think I suck as a person. I think
Exactly.
I'm trying to do something impossible.
Exactly.
And I'm failing forward and getting better.
So yeah, that's the best way I can explain it. We can have a deep dive into self-compassion. I think that might be helpful for the dudes. Okay, so last one is blaming self. So the last shame response is blaming self. So for example, let's say your partner tries to come on to you and they want to start making out and have sex with you or something like that, right? They want to get hot and steamy. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, like I'm just not in the mood. I'm just not there. Let's say, for example, you're on your period, or if it's a dude, let's say you're just like really stressed out because maybe you're grinding and you're just not in the mood. All of a sudden, your partner gets that, they're sweet, maybe they respect you. I'm really freaking hoping that they respect you if they're in the conscious couples community. And then all of a sudden in the aftermath, you start to blame yourself. You're like, I should have gotten myself to be in the mood. Or you start to blame yourself that like you are a bad person because you didn't bid for your partner's attention back, or that you didn't want to have sex, or that you weren't in the mood. Like you're the bad person because you actually have needs, and you blame yourself for that instead of actually taking into consideration, oh, well, there are external things that impact mood, and it's not necessarily that you are a bad person and you should blame yourself and have shame for that.
Give me a tangible example of, and then we got to jump, someone who takes accountability for their part in it versus someone who is blaming themselves.
In this situation?
In this situation, yeah.
Go deeper, please.
Because self-accountability would be, okay, I haven't gotten good sleep lately. I haven't been taking care of myself. I'm not leaving any more in the tank to make sure I can invest in our sexual relationship. That's, to me, very positive.
Yeah.
And constructive. That's constructive.
Yeah.
What would be blame the self? Like, how would that look different?
I suck. I'm a bad partner.
And then you do it anyway, even though you don't want to do it.
Yeah, it could be that, or you could not engage and you could just blame yourself for not engaging, not having to do with your behaviors at all.
How would you even notice that? Like, what's above the surface in that instance? Like, how would a partner notice if a partner's doing that?
Blaming themselves?
Yeah.
Usually they wouldn't, because this is happening in their head.
Right.
Or if they externalize it, then they're likely saying something like, I'm so sorry. They're apologizing for their behavior. They're apologizing for not
so they're
wanting to have sex.
apologizing even though it's nothing to apologize for.
Exactly.
And I've done that many times. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your partner's shame response? The 4 were, let's wrap up here. What was the 4?
The 4 word in the order that we had it in this episode was blame others, defend/deny, avoid/withdraw, and then blame self.
Okay, so every one of us has all 4 of them. However, we have 1 or 2 big ones and 1 really big go-to.
What I've learned in the research and what I've learned in my clinical practice, babe, is that we all have a go-to number 1.
Okay.
And when number 1 doesn't work...
80% of the time we're doing that,
80%
basically?
of the time. Yeah. And when number 1 doesn't work, for whatever reason, then we go into the next one. So again, it's kind of boom, 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 but usually we have a stopping point, and I'm not going to get into
all right,
research.
So sit down with your partner, send them this episode, try to identify your top 2, your big one and your secondary, if the first one doesn't work, and then your partners as well. Okay, before we go, we have Relationship Talks coaching. Here's the deal. If you're on the brink of divorce or breaking up, and it's make or break time, we will help you tremendously. Grow together, not apart. We have had several couples come to us on the literal brink of divorce, and I'm talking decade-plus marriages, and we have absolutely turned those marriages around, and now they are flourishing to the point where they would make you sick with how in love with it they are. I'm being playful, obviously.
cute.
If you are on the brink and you have tried everything else, please try Relationship Talks Coaching. 30 minutes free in the show notes. We always go over 30 minutes, although lately that's probably not going to happen. At the end of the day, if you really are in dire straits, please use us as a resource. We do this. We've done this every week for almost 5 years now. This is what we do, and at least try it.
Yeah. And on top of that, free resources. We're so dedicated to making sure that you have free resources and free community that you can get around who are going through similar things that you are. So July 17th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, how to create emotional safety in your relationship is going to be the next Relationship Talks event. And that is so much something that we are struggling with. We feel like we have to walk on eggshells all the time with our relationships. Thankfully, we don't have that. But what we hear from the conscious couples community is that is so common. People don't feel psychologically safe or emotionally safe in the relationship. So we're going to get into how to create emotional safety. And we hope you join us.
One of the reasons the emotional safety is not present is because of these shame responses. So make sure you do that work. Again, thank you so much for joining, listening, watching. We appreciate you. As always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please check the show notes to connect with us and say hello on social media.
If you and your partner resonated with this episode, please leave us a 5-star review at the link in the show notes and share this with someone you love. Until next time, it's not about you or me, it's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.